Welcome back to another exciting episode of our podcast. I'm Justice Shani.
I'm Yash Patel.
Myself, Param Kamdar. Today we have an exciting topic to discuss, myths surrounding front-end and back-end model. For this particular topic, we have a professional software engineer for discussion, and she is from United States of America. Let's see her introduction.
I'd first like to thank you to take the time out for this. I currently have around 7 years of work ex into software development, basically into the SAP domain. Uh, I started off as a backend developer, but then as time has progressed, I have moved into the front end and the integration part of it as well. I have had the privilege of working with companies like Tata Consultancy Services. I was briefly employed with Accenture and Entity Data as well, and the last company being SAP, which I presently work in. And I give my full consent to you to use this recording as a source for your podcast, and you can refer it as and when possible, and you can make use of the content that's being shared right now.
Yeah. What do you think about the front-end, back-end development model?
So, in my opinion, front-end is basically a thing that user can able to interact with, and back-end is playing a role in the behind-the-scenes scenario. Like user won't be able to judge what is going on in the backend thing and what they are going to use.
Yeah, even I think the same. For me, front-end is something that user interacts with, and he does what he wants. Basically, yeah, it's easier for him to understand what's the service or product the developers have developed for him.
Yeah.
Suppose he wants to click a photo, he would just open the camera, he would just see himself and click the photo and save it.
Yeah.
The saving part would be done by backend. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think in the layman terms, I would just say that the front end is basically the visual representation of what the user sees on a website, and the back end is usually the complex or the hard stuff that is hidden from the users.
But I think that even in front end also there is a lot of complex things because there are dynamic front ends where things happens on the screen also. So this thing is like kind of contradicting. Like front end is just what we see. It's also about the logic how we want them to see.
But however, I have heard that front end is going to be obsolete. Like in market, there are many of the no-code tools are available. Like many of the businesses are willing to use that to increase the pace of their development processes, and it's globally every companies are using that particular software. So I think that front-end development is on the verge of getting obsolete. So,
Yeah, that's right. Many people think that this no-code tools will replace front-end developers. But let's take a deeper look of how the front end is and its role in software development.
So let's hear the opinion of Sneha. What's her opinion on particular myth for which we have discussed right now?
Let's talk about a myth that has been going around. So, first is that front-end development is becoming obsolete. So, it primarily arises from the misconceptions about the impact of low-code and no-code platforms on the role of front-end developers. So, what's your view on this?
So first of all, I believe that these low-code and no-code tools, they are basically used. They are becoming increasingly available in the market, and they usually are being used by very early stage developers or somebody who's a non-software engineer, somebody who wants to build up an application which does not involve a lot of code. So this basically targets the group who tends to make something which is very easy and maintainable. But the myth that you say that the front end development is becoming obsolete, I feel that these low code no code tools, they usually simplify things, but they won't replace the whole front-end development. You see, in the practical world, the business works in a very different way. Uh, Different businesses have different technical requirements, and hence they can have different needs for their softwares to work. And these environments are, I mean, the tools that you're talking about, they usually lack complexity and customization, and they like restrict how a software would work, and in turn they would restrict the control from the users also. So basically, you'll if you're using them, you're not able to work on very complex things, and you won't be able to customize any software as per your business requirements. And this is what is one roadblock that I feel. And this is definitely a myth that the front end development would become obsolete, because in this case, you won't be able to do any customization or complexity kind of in any of the applications. Hence, it won't replace the front end development for sure.
Yeah, and I exactly agree with what Sneha says. Front end is has different use cases. Every business have their own requirements. So if a non-engineer person wants to create a website or a web app, he would definitely use some tools like no code and low code tools. But if a business is very complex and the business requirement are very complex, then we cannot use that low code or no code softwares, and there will be additional changes in the later stages also. So it's very very hard to do that in low code and no code.
Yeah.
So while this problem will help this streamline the process of developing websites and other things, but it would never replace problem solving skills and other customizing skills that front end developer has.
I totally agree with that particular opinion from what which Sneha told to us.
Yeah.
So we,
But I have one doubt. As you said before, that there's logic in front end, right? So how do you plan to justify it?
even I also think that there is no logic in the front end, as I have seen that there are many predefined components and predefined designs are easily available to the market, that developers can able to use those things in their particular system or project. They just need to copy the code from the internet access, and they can just directly put on their system, so that it would be very easy to them, that they do not have to use any such logics or to build a front end thing. What's your
So what are you talking about is about websites or apps, something like that. But there is front end is used in different fields also. Like if you see a video game, right, there is a front end in that. From what I have seen, like I have played a game called Counter Strike, in which the model moves from one position to another position. That happens in backend. But if you see the game from third point of view, it would seem like the model is also moving. So that is a front end part, right? The model is a front end. That is also moving. So front end has some logic to move his hands, move his weapon and everything.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that front end also has a logic. And let's hear what Sneha has to say about this topic.
Right. So coming to another myth, so like there's no logic in the front end is a misconception amongst many developers. So is it correct?
Now, this is also one more common misconception that almost developers have, that this logic is usually something which is handled by the backend part of an application. But this totally also depends on the type of application that you're building. And these days, it's more like you need to have your they emphasize more on the database being not being loaded with so many queries and things like that. There are so many languages, like JavaScript is a very fast language which works in the front end, and it's much faster in dealing with the queries and getting the data. So basically, in all the languages, it's more of like you don't go into the backend part of it, and you try to build as much as possible on the front end itself. So there's no logic in front end is a total misconception. And we also understand that in the front end environment, like it deals with a lot of architecture as well, and there is a management of workflow to it as well. So like if you are going through a website, and if you want to trigger something, there are events which are triggered, and this is triggered by the user interaction, and there are APIs that would then integrate the front end, the back end. So it definitely has some user interaction and flow as well. So there is some definite logic which goes into the front end part of it.
And as you said, like I thought the same thing, but my example was different. But there is some logic in front end which would definitely depend on back end, but we have to put some logic in front end also, so that user can feel what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like as we heard from the Sneha that she said that front-end development is also requires so many logic inside to build any front-end thing, right? And we also know that the back-end is basically a logic building thing. So, do you guys think that back-end should have the knowledge of the front-end development in order to develop any particular project or something?
It's good that you say that, Param, because I have seen projects, even I have done some projects in which backend developers just care about the backend part. They create the APIs and the front end will just create the UI and UX part, because we define the designing part first. So they did their own thing, we did their own thing, and we managed to create a website or a project after that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so as you guys might think that your job is only for creating APIs and managing the database, right?
Yeah.
But that you don't have to interact with front end at all. But in practice, understanding the front end can lead to more effective collaboration with the front end developers, because like you can the front end developers can expect how the data is transmitted to them. Like they can that can help you design better APIs that can help in the overall structure of the project. So the back and forth communication with the front end and back end teams is a must, I think.
Yeah, let's see what Sneha has to say about this topic.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, so talking about the third myth, as a backend developer, there's a myth going around that you don't need to know front end. So is it true?
So in the practical world, it's usually like people have this thing that they want to specialize into something, and application can be divided basically into three parts. That would be the front end, the back end, and the middleware integration. So there are people who specialize in the middleware integration part of it as well. While it is okay to specialize into something like that, but then if you are a full stack developer, that obviously is uh, is a good thing for the company also, because there is a flow that goes from the front end to the back end. And if you are somebody who's a full stack developer, you'll have some front end knowledge also, which will always be very beneficial in troubleshooting and debugging, in making better results, like having a full view of how the application is working. You can also better troubleshoot issues. You can also have good collaboration with the whole team. So this usually makes the whole process very easy, and hence it's not. I mean, you should not just this definitely is a myth that if you're a backend developer, then you don't need to have any knowledge about front end. You can always be a full stack developer and make things better for the team and the company. So yeah, that is how it is.
After hearing what Sneha said, even I remember that in my project, after developing the entire backend and entire frontend we had problems in integrating both of them, because they wanted the data in a different way. We gave them in a different way. We put that in a database, and they wanted a API which generates in JSON format. So there was some lack of communication between them, and because of that, the project took so long time to being in the ready state, complete stage. So I think I think that front end also requires to know back end, and back end similarly. And back end also requires to know the front end.
Like collaboration is the must thing to build. Agree that.
So as we have already talked about so much about front end and back end, let's talk about some about business. So what I've heard is backend developers or any kind of developers or technical engineers don't need to know about the business part so much to develop something. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I remember I had a friend of mine who was working in a startup based out in Europe. So basically, he was working in an internal project that was related to something government, right? So he was not aware of any rules and regulations of the European government, but he was still successful in completing the project. So I think, yeah.
But however, what in my opinion, what I think is that the backend developer should have some sort of insights of the business logic, because businesses are getting too much complex nowadays, right? So they would have so many different rules and restrictions. But if they are going to build any such products, they might have some sort of understanding of that, so they can able, like they can provide such more securities. Like they could able to know that for which component I have to provide more security or something. But if they wouldn't have knowledge about the business logics, then it might be difficult in a bigger picture while scaling up the project. So they can face some of the issues further in the future development. That's my opinion. Now just let's heard what's view of Sneha on this particular thing, that backend developer would have knowledge of business or not.
Yeah.
Correct. So talking about another myth, it's about all the software developers in general, that you don't need to understand the business logic as a developer, be it front end or back end. So is it correct?
So, as we were talking about the front end, the low code, no code platform tools, anybody can learn to code very easily these days with these tools as well. But an application does not involve just coding. It is always made on some business logic. As a company, you need to know what are your customers demanding from your software, and that is why there is always some or the other customization in different companies' softwares, and this is where the business logic comes into picture. So if you're going to go into a field where it involves building an application and you don't know the business logic, it's going to do you no good, because a developer would need to figure out how its flow is going, and you also need to understand the customer's perspective, how they are going to make use of the business logic and how they want the application to run. So as a developer, I believe that you certainly need to understand why the business logic is important, and how and this will always also help you in the integration part of it, as in how you're going to build up the front end and how you're going to use your database and how efficiently and how scalable you're going to build your the application. So this also helps in better communication with the users of the application. So you can also resolve issues very easily if you know the business logic and how the application is working. So yeah, this is that if you don't understand the business logic, then definitely the application is going nowhere. So you need to understand the business logic.
Yeah, as you guys have heard the opinion of Sneha, that she is supporting that at least backend developer would have some sort of knowledge about business, and I'm also agree with what Sneha said, because it's becoming a crucial thing that at least a backend developer could provide so many features to business in development of particular their aspects. Yeah, so that's my view on that.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to recognize that front end and back end are the two sides but of the same coin.
Yeah.
So I think both of them plays a vital role in creating an efficient web application.
Yeah, I also think that theory and practice is a kind of similar thing, but in the practical era, it is a kind of very difficult thing that we can able to understand after talking with professional software engineers. So yeah, she said a lot of things that change our aspects about particular myths.
Yeah. So even I completely agree with that. So theory is essential, but practical knowledge is the practical things that we have to do in the real world. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Until then, keep coding, stay safe, stay curious, and yeah, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye everyone.